When the challenges we face start to seem overwhelming or even impossible, let us never forget that doing the impossible is the history of this nation. It is who we are as Americans. It is how this country was built.
Michelle Obama, First Lady of the United States, with a rousing speech last night at the Democratic National Convention. With us this morning to analyze the tone of the convention and what he heard last night, Joe Sestak, former admiral, congressman, political analyst, and lovable dad. And he's with us here this morning. Good morning, Joe. How you doing?
Good to be with you again, Gary. Thank you.
Great to have you aboard this morning. And, Joe, great words from Michelle Obama right there. I think we could all tie into that. And there were a lot of things she said last night. I thought her speech was very, very good. I thought Ann Romney's speech last week was good. I thought this one was equally as good, if not maybe a little bit better last night, in trying to describe not only the president, but also where he's taken us. And, again, you can agree or disagree with the politics, but she was a heck of a speaker last night.
Yes, she sure was. But I think you're right. I think Ann Romney really did a bang-up job in humanizing her husband and his charitable contributions, where he didn't brag about them, he just did them. I think, though, last evening, Michelle Obama did something not only similar, but she also did something else. She was able to present a family through the prism of the presidency and what it did or didn't do to them. And I thought the most memorable line for me was that the presidency doesn't change a person. It reveals who a person is. And I thought she did, as you said, a very good job for the first day of the convention.
Yeah, this was the line I think you're talking about last night. Let's see if we can play that for you. It was Michelle Obama last night.
I have seen firsthand that being president doesn't change who you are. No, it reveals who you are.
Now, Joe, I can hear that in some Republican ad later on today that, yeah, it did. We thought this guy might be more of a centrist. He's actually, much further to the left. So I'm sure there will be people that will take that and run with it in the other direction, as I'm sure the Democrats did last week with a number of the Republican things.
Yes, I think you're right. But I think it was a true statement. I remember once John F. Kennedy reading about him, and he says, look, you cannot judge a person in the seat of the presidency until you've sat in that seat. Well, he didn't quite have it right. This is a democracy, and we get to say how the presidency reveals who a person is. My take on the president is, we sit here and let's go back to the facts. The level of employment, Gary, and you and I, and America knows it is still far too high. And for those who have lost their jobs and unable to find a job, they're not better off than they were a few years ago. And yet, we also know that when the president took over, that we were contracting in our economy at negative 9%.
Right.
Today, it's growing at 2.5%. Unemployment was greater than 10%. The stock market had crashed in half to 6,500. Well, it's doubled, and we're no longer losing 800 jobs a month. I think he said it pretty well about himself. It's an incomplete. And now the decision is, do you think the president revealed a man that maybe will say, wait a minute, I understand we could only get so far because I didn't have the whole country with me, and I need to reach across again to the aisle and do that better this time, where the Republicans get a win if he's president, as well as Democrats in affecting some of their policies for America.
I think you make a great point, Joe, but I would add to that, and I think a lot of people are sitting out there, and this is where maybe the difference comes, and it's not about, let's take, you and I can pretty much take right and left out of this for a moment. Let's talk about it from the standpoint of the policy, and a lot of people are saying, okay, yeah, he's making progress. 29 straight months of private sector employment. We can look at that. We could say Obamacare. Of course, the nation's pretty well split on that. But you say, did the policies that he make keep us from going faster in the right direction? And that's the unknown. That's the unseen out there right now. And a lot of people are saying, in our opinion, that is what has happened, that it would be going a lot faster, as most other recessions have gone before this time historically.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The other side of that unknown, of that same coin, is, well, if the Republicans have been able to continue their policies, that is, there had been no economic stimulus bill, there had been no TARP bill, there had been no bailout of Wall Street or of General Motors and the automobile industry, man, we'd be on the bottom of the ocean,
well,
he would argue.
touche.
So we've got to move forward, I think, on these two unknowns and say, what is it they're saying now that they will have benchmarks for their policies that we can begin to do what we haven't been able to do, hold them accountable for them.
And the one thing we do know, though, that, for example, we look at Ford, who did not take stimulus money, and they made out pretty well, thank you very much. So, I mean, there are some things there, at least some hints. But your point well taken, a couple of unknowns out there, and we'll never know, but we have to try to figure out what the best way is to go forward for all of us. Now, when we come back, I want to play a statement by Cory Booker last night and still get your thoughts on not only what he had to say, but also the tone of the convention so far. If you're pleased as a Democrat and also as an American with the tone of the convention, we'll ask that question of Joe Sestak when we return at 7:20 right here on York's Morning News.
When your country is in a costly war with our soldiers sacrificing abroad, and our nation is facing a debt crisis at home, being asked to pay your fair share isn't class warfare, it's patriotism.
That was Cory Booker last night, Mayor of Trenton, New Jersey. With us this morning is Joe Sestak, former admiral and congressman. Joe, when you hear that, it sounds a little bit like what Joe Biden had said sometime earlier, that it's you're paying your fair share is patriotism. You're a guy who has served our country, and we thank you again for your service to our country as an admiral in the Navy. But is it patriotism to pay your fair share? And if that is the case, does fair also apply to those who are paying nothing in the country right now?
Yeah, you raise a good point. What we don't want to do is make sure that we begin to harm what everybody believes in, the American dream, that you can make it to the very top. Look, Gary, you and I, everybody wanted to be a millionaire when we graduated from high school. You know, sometimes when I go to some of these fundraisers, I look around the houses people have, and I say, man, maybe I shouldn't have gone to the circus. And so we shouldn't condemn it. However, we should remember this, and this is what's happening. We forget that we have shared values as a group, as Americans. That Constitution says we the people, not we the rich or we the poor. Right. And so when one side does what you're talking about, like you just heard the class warfare, or the other side says wrongly that President Obama is trying to make welfare easier, when in fact what happened is two Republican governors asked for more flexibility within their states to do it even better, to make better people go back to work earlier, and then all of a sudden you mischaracterize it. It's not about the poor, it's not about the rich, it's about everybody. And yes, I do agree in shared sacrifice when problems are tough, from poor to seniors.
Well,
to
and
rich.
you know what's amazing?
And I don't think that theme is coming across well at all.
We already do that now on Main Street, don't we? I mean, we do that because we have to share, because we have finite amounts of treasure. I guess the one thing that I'd like to see both parties do a better job on is talk about how do we foster more independence among all Americans with freedom to choose and get government out of the way so that they can make more choices on their own for the betterment of themselves and the communities around them.
You're absolutely right. To a large degree, regulations should not be burdensome, where you have a local county, you have a state, and you have the federal government, all with duplicative types of regulations. Right. Look, I met somebody in York County that's doing work with just providing cement, and the types of regulations walking me through were out of sight. On the other hand, if you don't have transparency, like on Wall Street, to make sure they weren't trading $850 trillion of nominal value of derivatives in the middle of the night, then we can't say whether they're going to do damage to our economy. Or take another example, GlaxoSmithKline for 10 years was pushing drugs that were not meant for children onto children, and finally got caught to the cost of $3.5 billion. Once again, Gary, it comes back to that thing you and I always talk about. What's the right balance where government isn't into our individual liberty, but at the same time it can enhance our opportunity to get goods to market by roads and infrastructure.
And we'll continue to search for that throughout the convention, the campaign. Joe, a friend of yours making a little speech tonight, President Clinton. Tomorrow we're going to analyze it. I'm looking forward to talking to you tomorrow morning.
Have a great day.
You too. Thanks so much. Joe Sestak with us here on York's Morning News.